My name is Hinds and welcome to my channel. Now, if you've been here for a while, you'll know that Rainbow Six has played a huge part in my gaming life. It's one of the games that made me fall in love with video games to begin with. Patrick Rumpella commented and requested that we do a history of Tom Clancy games. Dude, if we did that, we'd be here all day. And because Rainbow Six Siege is coming out, I thought that, why not, let's get hyped about Rainbow Six instead. I'm going to be doing a brief history, just touching on a couple of expansion packs, but there was a lot that was brought out for Rainbow Six. If you liked Rainbow Six, if you loved it, please smash that like button and comment. Let me know, what was your favorite Rainbow Six game? What is the game that really resonated with you? Before we start, I just want to say thank you to Megaron for helping me make this video possible. Let's do this, Tom! Rainbow Six, more properly called Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six, the first game came out in 1998 and was based on one of Tom Clancy's novels, also called Rainbow Six. The game is important because it created the genre of the tactical shooter, a genre which contrasted completely with the kind of games that were popular at the time. You know, stuff like Quake, Serious Sam, and Unreal. Rainbow Six wasn't just realistic in the sense that the setting was based on the then current military hardware, so no lasers, arc lightning guns, or BFGs, but the gameplay itself tried to replicate a real special forces operation. The game emphasized planning an assault just as much, if not more, than the actual assault itself. With Rainbow Six, you could easily spend hours just deciding on how you would enter a building, what weapons you would use, when you would use them, and what you would do if things went wrong. The game wasn't kidding about being a tactical shooter. The entire pace of the game was slow, cautious, and thoughtful. You really had to think carefully about how to breach a room, because if you didn't, team members or hostages would die. And remember, those team members, if they died, they died. You wouldn't be able to bring them into future missions. And death in Rainbow Six was permanent. That made Rainbow Six a very hard and frustrating game, but in a good way, because it motivated you to learn more and to play better. You can actually play this game now if you want, since the PC version is available on Good Old Games or GOG.com, and there's even a version on the PlayStation Store, which I don't really recommend, prefer the PC version. Rainbow Six Rogue Spear. The game was followed up in 1999 by a sequel subtitled Rogue Spear. Given how quickly it came out after the original, it's no surprise that the game is pretty much identical to the first one in terms of gameplay. So careful planning, good use of weapons and team members were again center stage. All that really changed was the plots and the settings. They had some really cool settings. But what the sequel proved without a doubt was that there was definitely an appetite for the slower paced, more thoughtful kind of shooter. How do we know this? Because not only was Rogue Spear a hit on its own, it had 4 successful standalone expansion packs that all came out within 2 years of the game's release. People really wanted that. People were hungry for Rainbow Six. Fun fact, Rainbow Six Takedown Missions in Korea, which was released during that period as well, was kind of a spin-off expansion that only went on sale in South Korea. You guessed it. Rainbow Six 3 Raven Shield. Now, even by the standards of the time, the earlier Rainbow Six games weren't the most graphically accomplished games. I remember my PC had problems playing them, but hey. With the third game, the dev team decided to up their own game in that department. For the first time in a Rainbow game, you could actually see your character's weapon. Remember, there was no weapon on screen in the last ones. That sounds like it would be an obvious inclusion for a first-person shooter, but yeah, it was the first time in a Rainbow Six game, and it was important because without the gun on screen, it emphasized the tactics, not necessarily the weapon play. But the game wasn't just a new lick of paint. Rainbow Six 3 Raven Shield made a real effort to improve on what had come before in all areas. The enemy AI was improved tremendously. Terrorists would now investigate if you made noises during your breach, they'd fall back and regroup if you overwhelmed them, and your team's AI was also upped. The team seemed to be more aware of their surroundings, calling out or taking out targets more effectively than before. Hearing the popular Tango Down never sounded so sweet. The game also made it easier to issue orders during operations, so it became easier to deviate from the plan set during the planning phase if you needed to. Getting your team to open doors for you with a flashbang and then you charge in afterwards to headshot tangos remains a big highlight for me. The console version of the game was a different experience. Unlike the PC version, there was now a planning stage and you could only control one character, though you could issue orders to the other 3 members of your team. That style of play would come to dominate the series a few years later once the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 came around. Like Rogue Spear, this game would get a few expansions, including one just for the Xbox called Black Arrow. Rainbow Six Lockdown. It's at around about this stage that things started going sour for a while. While still being billed as a tactical shooter, Lockdown deviated majorly from the originals. In a form of franchise heresy, there was no planning phase, and the player controlled only one character, and the team on the ground was limited to 4 operatives. Levels were totally linear, and while it was possible to order teammates like in Raven Shield, the game as a whole felt pretty much dumbed down. Remember, this is supposed to be a hardcore tactical shooter. The PC version did feature redesigned levels that weren't as linear, but with the gameplay largely the same as the console version, it didn't really help. Lockdown is regarded with mixed memories. PC gamers mostly hated it since it's so different from the earlier games, and console gamers have a more favorable view since the whole squad-based combat was still largely a novelty for them at the time. The game sequel, Rainbow Six Critical Hour, made some effort to address those criticisms, but since the game wasn't released on PC, it kind of doomed itself. It returned to the spirit of the earlier games with planning, caution, and realism taking center stage, but that was too unfamiliar to console gamers who were expecting something entirely different. That's what you get for taking out features and then adding them in later, guys. Rainbow Six Vegas. Now, Rainbow Six Vegas was a major departure from the spirit of the original games, abandoning all pretense at being a proper tactical shooter, which doesn't mean it was a bad game, it was just very different. It just had elements of that. Vegas was a more familiar first-person shooter than the older games, but it did innovate a few things that made it a fantastic experience. The player was one of a 3-member Rainbow team defending Las Vegas from a terrorist attack. Players could use the D-pad to order squad mates around, and this tool became a fundamental element of the game. While Vegas didn't have a planning phase, the game did place some emphasis on tactics and thoughtful approach to combat. So what you would do is you'd order your team to stack up near a door while you repelled to a window. You would mark which tangos each member of the team needed to take down, and then synchronize your attack to take everyone out as quickly and efficiently as possible. It was awesome. Coming out 15 days after Gears of War, Vegas was just pipped to the post as the game to introduce cover-based shooting, a feature that has revolutionized shooting games since. While fans of the original still lamented the decline of a proper tactical shooter, Vegas was still an undeniably awesome game, as its host of Best First-Person Shooter of the Year honors can attest. It was followed by a sequel, Rainbow Six Vegas 2, which was a pretty by-the-numbers sequel that continued the plot of the first. The gameplay was identical to the first Vegas, making it instantly familiar to fans. Great idea, guys. Super stoked you did that. This game is probably best remembered for allowing players to choose the gender of the main character, being one of the first few first-person shooter games to feature a woman lead. Another interesting feature is that players could use the Xbox Vision camera to put their face on the multiplayer character, which was perhaps more creepy than cool. Hey, it was a lot of fun. On the couch, split screen, with your family members, with your brother, with your girlfriend. Best experience ever. And that's pretty much the history of the franchise in brief. Now we wait for the upcoming Rainbow Six Siege, a game which itself is deviating from the original formula, but in all the best ways possible. It's taking the spirit of what made Rainbow Six so cool and just dumping it in a brand new game. I can't wait to play more of it. You can go check out my impressions of the game in a Let's Play that I did on my channel. I'm going to include it in the cards in the top right-hand corner of this video. Make sure that you smash that like button if you love yourself some Rainbow Six, and comment. Don't forget to comment and let me know what is your favorite Rainbow Six game. I want to know! It's one of those games that really I have such a soft spot in my heart for. Until the next video, guys, high five a stranger. Adios.